on Open Book, someone that some of your best relationships in life can come from Twitter trolling. Okay. Miss Kara Swisher trolled me on Twitter, and look at us now, 5 years later, with this beautiful relationship. She's the host of On with Kara Swisher. She's the co-host of the Pivot podcast. She's the editor at large of New York Magazine, but she's also an author of a book, AOL.com, and There Must Be a Pony in Here somewhere.
Yes.
And there's so many great things to talk about with you, Kara. Welcome to Open Book.
Thank you. And I'm glad I trolled you. You were had good humor about it. You were easy to troll, though. Come on. You gave us lots of material.
I was easy to troll, but you also invited me on your podcast. And I think your friends were outraged by that invitation, but then they recognize, wait a minute, there's more here that meets the eye.
That's
correct.
Isn't
that true about journalism, though? Isn't it true that sometimes your first impression of something may not be the right impression?
Of journalism or life?
Life.
Yes,
Let's say life.
So.
Journalism.
I tend to try to bring in people that I disagree with or I might disagree with. I don't assume people are jerks until I actually get to know their jerky selves. And so I tend to try to bring as many points of view as possible in. So I don't assume anything until I actually spend time with them. Obviously, I hear things about people and this and that. And then there's the media lens that people are. But I'm always surprised, usually pleasantly, by people if I get to know them. I'm not surprised on the negative side as much as I am as the positive side.
Well, there's a secret sauce to being Kara Swisher.
I guess. Okay.
Oh, yeah, let me just go over this. Okay, you're a brilliant journalist. You have this amazing podcast. You're an author. You break stories.
Yeah,
okay, so it's not just like you're a pundit. Mm-hmm. You're actually in the know, and you are scooping people.
Used to be. I don't do that
anymore.
And
so in a lot of different ways, I mean, you're probably not going to like this comparison, but like, you remind me a little bit of Ryan Seacrest in that way.
Oh, that's a compliment. I love Ryan. He's great.
Okay, yeah, but you're able to do a lot of different things. I love Ryan as well. I have a lot of respect for him, but he can move across the bandwidth.
He does.
And do 10 or 15 things at the same time exceptionally well.
Yeah.
What is the Kara Swisher secret sauce?
Secret. There's no secret. It's interesting you mentioned Ryan because that's a person who everyone was like, why do you want to talk to him? I'm like, are you kidding? He's everywhere. He has production. He's a really good personality. He's done music stuff. He's entrepreneurial. So that's why, he actually, when I met with him, he's like, why do you want to meet with me? And I said, I think you're an entrepreneur. I love entrepreneurs. I don't care how they do. I don't care how your hair looks or whatever. But he had a public persona that was not what was actually going on. There's lots of people like this. Sean Hayes is another person who was on Will and Grace. He's also a producer. He's now got a successful podcast. I'm really attracted to entrepreneurial types. And I suppose the secret sauce to me is that, as I'm very entrepreneurial as a reporter and as a person in life, right? I'm willing to try things. I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to say, I don't think that's right. I don't like to stick with the regular. Like, I don't like if just because something's working, I don't necessarily want to blow it up for no good reason. But I do like to sort of explore why we do the things we do, especially when it comes to consumer products. Like mine happens to be journalism. So I was always searching for ways to make it different and better for the consumer.
I have a theory that I want to test on you. I think a lot of we're born with certain traits and certain acumen and so forth, but a lot of the things that we do in life come from our upbringing. And I'm wondering if you think that that's true. And if it is, tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how it led you to where you are.
It's a good question. We're just talking about that on Pivot. I think probably more negatively than positively, but positively in a negative way. My dad died when I was really little. And I was, that leaves you at a very empty place when you have, a parent losing a parent. Like it's like half your friends die essentially. And we were very close. And even though I was 5, I don't have a lot of memories. I have too many younger kids. I have 4 kids, but I remember thinking when they were 5, wow, this was me, right? They know me really well. And so the loss was rather vast. And I think that sort of changes how you look at life. I think a lot of well-known people have had that happen to them. Steve Jobs was another person very aware of death. I spent a lot of time. I think that's one of the things I brought from my upbringing that was important, but not, I wish it was another way I could learn that particular lesson about how life is finite and you have to go for things even when you don't want to, or you shouldn't waste time. And I think that was a really good lesson. I had a very close relationship with my grandmother. I spent a lot of time, she's Italian. She's 100% Italian. She was very, she wasn't educated. She was not, she stayed in her house her whole life. You know what I mean? Didn't go far, but I learned a lot about kindness. And
I grew up in that sort of a neighborhood, Kara, so I totally get that.
Yeah, so I think that was important. I think, I grew up relatively wealthy, very wealthy, I would say, compared to most people. And I also worked really hard. And so I spent a lot of time rejecting a lot of, here, take this, get on this train and this and that. But all my brothers and I are really hard workers. And so I think one of the things we did was we were in those worlds where people got to get a leg up for no good reason other than their parents. And we rejected that rather substantively a lot of the time. And I know, but it was a very good insight into that world. And as I started covering tech moguls, you saw what happens when people have too much money, what happens to them personally.
So let's talk about that, because I'm fascinated by this. I feel like there was a commercial in the 80s where they opened up an egg and they said, "This is your brain," and then they put the egg in a frying pan and they said, "This is your brain on drugs," and your brain was frying. But I also think there's a little bit of that is related to money, meaning this is your brain, and then this is your brain on money. And so you interview a lot of people that have incredible amounts of money. What happens to the brain on money?
I don't know if it's money as much as what money brings with it, which is a lot of enablers, a lot of people who agree with you violently, that you're always right, a lot of people that lick you up and down all day, that you never get feedback that is negative, that is deserved and negative. I don't mean negative to negative sake, because that's just a jerk, right?
Right.
But I think it's really important for you to get points of view and different things. That's not right. That's not correct. And I think the richer you get, you tend to reject disagreement quite a bit. You don't like it. It's a pain in the neck. And, I'm working on my memoir of Silicon Valley right now, and I'm going to have an epilogue of people I used to be very close with who won't speak to me anymore, right? Because I stayed the same and they changed. Like, I was like, one of them, they did something pretty stupid. And when I saw them, I'm like, well, that was stupid. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, how dare you say that? And I was like, I'm sorry. Last year's person would have been like, oh yeah, that was dumb. And very few people stay. There are people who stay that way. I was just writing the section about Steve Jobs, and they introduced a thing called Ping. You don't remember it. It was a social network called Ping. And it was music oriented, and it was sort of a mashup of Facebook and Twitter. It was terrible. And he came out, he presented it, and he came out, and he had Coldplay introduce it, right? And I don't like Coldplay, so that was even worse. And I came out, and he said, "What do you think?" He comes out of the demo areas. He came over to me, and he knew I covered social networking, and he said, "What do you think, Karen?" I'm like, "That just sucked. This is a shitty social network. And by the way, it made worse by Coldplay." Now, he was a friend of Chris Martin, so he defended Coldplay, but then he was the only person who's like, it kind of does suck. And I'm like, it kind of does. Like, I don't know. You're not very good at social media. I don't know why you're doing it as a reaction. And he immediately was like, you know what? We're doing it as a reaction rather than it doesn't play to our strength. And we had a great discussion. Very few of those discussions are to be had in Silicon Valley once people get to a certain level of power.
Let me stop you for a second. Was he already sick with pancreatic cancer when that happened?
He was sick almost all the time I spent time with him. He got sick and got better. I think that was Ping was, he wasn't, maybe. You
think his impending mortality, though, affected
He didn't think he was going to die. Let me just say, because he recovered several times. Like, he recovered rather significantly in 2009, I think it was.
Yes.
And so I think he definitely was sick again, but I think he was like that the whole time. If you look back at some of his things, he had an image of being like the king, but he wasn't. He had a lot of people who disagreed with him around him. And he talked about it a lot. When I went back to listen to some of our interviews, he said, I lose arguments all the time. If you don't have people around you, and if hierarchy wins over ideas, you've already lost. And I thought he was rare, let me just say, because everyone else, if Mark Zuckerberg was still speaking to me, I'm like, metaverse? No. And here's why. I don't think he would listen. I don't think he had people around him that were giving him good advice. So.
All right. So I think we both
know about
agree.
that. You worked in the Trump White
I worked in politics, but I know about that in the hedge fund industry.
Yeah, same thing.
I go up and down with my friends in the hedge fund industry because some of them don't want to hear bad news. Some of them don't, like bad news.
Right.
Bill Ackman said a few weeks ago, and I consider him a friend. I know Bill a long time. He said that the difference between successful people and quote unquote unsuccessful people is their ability to get through things, meaning every person has a rough patch, whether it's Steve Jobs, we know
especially
about
Bill Ackman. Yeah, definitely.
Bill Ackman would be a good example of that. And everybody has a rough patch. I was just with Michael Dell recently, and people don't remember this, but in 1993, his laptops caught on fire.
Yeah, he had several rough patches. He had several.
Yeah, but I mean, and he hung in there. And so, do you think when you're writing this memoir about Silicon Valley, is that one of the things in it for yourself, for me, for anybody? I've gone through my rough patches. I keep climbing. Isn't that what you have to do?
I think some of them, yes. The persistence in the face of negativity is definitely a really, the ability to pivot. That's the word they tend to use. Being okay with failure. I think that's a hallmark of my career too. I haven't actually failed that much when I went and looked at it, but the ability to take risks, I think, is really the most important thing. And be okay with it and then move on. Because there's so many people like Stuart, the guy who founded Butterfield, who founded Slack. That started off as I remember going to visit him. It was a game company that failed. It was up in Vancouver. He loved that game company and didn't work. And then the system they used to communicate with each other became Slack, right? So that was a failure that turned into a success. And so the ability to look at things, and he had several of those. He had another game company. And then he sold it. It's called Picasa. It was a photo thing that he sold to Google, I think. So he had a lot of game failures that became successful businesses. And so I think, and also the ability to give up is something that isn't irreconcilable. I think that's the one thing that they do. That said, on the flip side of that, some of them stick with things way longer than they should, and not giving up becomes really like not giving up is a problem too.
What is the one big tech thing that we should be paying attention to that we're not? Obviously, the thing in the news now is
chat
AI.
GPT. Yeah, AI.
Right.
Yeah.
But what is it? Are we missing something?
AI is like saying computer. You know that. Like it's just like it's so funny. It's applications of AI. Just generative AI. I don't quite. They like to put a slap a word on everything. It's just essentially machine learning.
Well, but it creates the hype. It creates the mania.
Well, it's like saying internet. What do you mean by that? Internet. It's like electricity. Right. What do you mean by that? Light bulbs, cars? What the heck? I do think AI is you're seeing a lot of investment. There's a hype cycle around it now because of this Chat GPT, which all the other companies have an ability to do, by the way. It just hasn't been productized yet. That was the first productization, I guess, of it. And so I find it underwhelming at this moment. And I think probably the creators of ChatGPT do too. But where it's going to go is unknown. It's like early internet was a picture was a video of a coffee machine brewing. We didn't know where it was going to become Google and this and that. And so I think we have to suspend knowing what it's going to be. But obviously, it's a really important. Right now, what ChatGPT is, if I thought about it, is the way you have spreadsheets for numbers. Like you don't think about using a calculator anymore or an abacus or whatever. You just put it in the spreadsheet and it just spits out the numbers. And so this is the same thing for text. And so for very easy stuff, it's really great. For other things, we'll see. And what businesses, I don't know. Like the valuations are pretty high. We'll see what it becomes. It feels like it could be commoditized.
There's something out there that we're missing.
I just think we don't know what it's going to be yet. And I think people spend a lot of time talking about doing term papers for colleges. That's not really a business, is it? So it's kind of what the media tends to focus on, which is silly. I do think climate change tech is something I've talked about a lot. I think there's a lot of opportunities. It's slow growth. It's a slow moving opportunity, but certainly around water and air and electricity and batteries. I think that would be where I would, if I was a young person, that's where I would focus. Although it's a long haul. It's very difficult. It has physical limitations. I think EVs are something, there's a lot of money to be spent making this industry, but it's sort of like, I would imagine it's like being at the car industry at the beginning. There were dozens and dozens of car companies, and then there were 3. So I think that's really interesting. I spent a lot of time thinking about EVs now. And then things like, I know it's not hydrogen-powered fuel planes. It's really cool. There's all this cool stuff happening, but there's going to be a lot of losers in that growth. But to me, the climate change tech area, if I was young and wanting to make a lot of money, would be where I would look.
All right. So I've been dying to ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
Oh, all right.
what is your best and worst interview? Because I've watched a lot of your interviews, and you're a great interviewer.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, when you come out of an interview, oh man, that was my worst interview, or this was a really good.
You have to look at the Gates Jobs interview. I think I didn't relish the Mark Sweating interview. I don't like when someone's in distress, and I didn't think that was good. For pure impact, the Parler CEO, where I interviewed him the night of January 6th when it was happening, and he acted like it didn't matter that he possibly was a handmaiden to sedition, and that got him fired, which was interesting. That was impactful, like just for that particular company.
I mean, he also got deplugged from the App Store,
from everything.
Right.
It just was because of that interview, because he said what he thought, which free speech, and so that was a really impactful. But I think the Gates Jobs interview was probably the one that will go down in history. Which bringing them two together and having a real civil discussion on a big level about what their impact. It was like interviewing Edison and Ford together or something. And so I thought that was important. Some of them I've liked a lot more. I love the Monica Lewinsky one. I think she's a really interesting character in a drama where she's the only player that acted with decency, actually, except for the initial thing when she was a kid, right? She was a kid. A kid. I thought she's sort of been the best person to emerge from that debacle.
That's 25 years ago, if you could imagine.
Yeah, but she's had to live it every day. Her life changed. She's a very gracious person, given she'd been like pummeled by the FBI and the Clintons and the right wing, and everybody took advantage of her in a different way. I like them all. I can't think of a bad one, Anthony. I thought ours was pretty good. Some of my early ones, I wasn't listening enough, and I was too quick to try to get a jab versus listening. I think if I look at those, I'm a little bit like, oh, if I should have just shut the fuck up.
Right.
So maybe, but it's like, it's learning. It's learning.
Yeah,
everything's learning.
I think that the best interviewers are the people that don't talk, actually, right?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes. When you've interviewed everybody, obviously, and you've interviewed some of the most successful people in our current zeitgeist. What are the common characteristics and themes that you notice in successful people? And what are some of the flaws that you notice in successful people?
I don't think there are any. People ask that. I think persistence is the only one, is that they are persistent in whatever they're doing, whether they're artists or, entrepreneurs or Hollywood people. I think the ability to change but not abandon core principles, if that makes sense. The idea of I think the ones that fail are the ones that are like, I'm going to disrupt everything. I'm like, why? For what reason? Just to break? Why don't you fix? I think there's the really successful people sort of are very careful. I would, put among them Reed Hastings of Netflix. He had a great idea. He kept pivoting when he had mistakes. Like he moved from DVDs, and then they're continuing to do it, moving to advertising. I think that's all him. In a lot of ways, or he's created a culture where that's allowed. And I think they're okay with declines. They don't lose their minds. They also don't feel like they have to blow up everything every 5 minutes to be noticed. And I think that's helpful. The people creativity, I think you can't beat creativity, and that's really hard to be creative. Everyone who's able to meld art and science seems to be, that's a Jobs kind of characteristic. People who are, what I consider plagiarists are usually burn out pretty quickly, copiers. And then also some businesses that I don't think much of can do very well, like Facebook. I think it steals people's data. And I think it's addictive. I think they're not safe enough, but it works. It works. They did a great job as a business. I don't admire it as a business, for example.
How about, let's go to your book. The book on AOL, which I thought was fascinating. Let's go to AOL, because AOL was everything.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, you and I are old enough to remember when AOL was, to me, the internet, and AOL was my portal. And people said that someday AOL would go by the wayside, and a lot of people snickered and said, "Oh no, that can't happen. It's everything." But it turned out it was a walled garden. Yeah. What's your reaction to that book that you wrote?
Oh, I love it. I went back and read it recently. It's actually pretty good. Some of the predictions are pretty good. I think they were a moment in time, but everything in it is what's now, right? like whether it was communications or music. They had a whole music offering. They had a whole thing around community, which was important. Obviously, advertising,
The chat rooms,
every element they had there it became its own industry. And I think they were very prescient in terms of a lot of stuff they did. Now, they got sort of messed up with that Time Warner acquisition, which directionally, if you think about it, I've been going back and looking at it, directionally, it was correct. It was directionally the right way to go. Timing wise, it was not great. And you know about that in finance. Some people can be directionally correct and just bad timing. And I think, and they also had a very reticent company they took over that was like determined to screw them because they, lots of reasons, their own faults too, their own hubris and arrogance was a problem. But I think they really, if you look at a lot of stuff they do, you're like, oh yeah, that happened. Like, well, you know that there's nothing new under the sun. That's a famous, I think it's Euripides.
Do you still have an AOL email?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I do. I think it's Swish K. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in years. I have a couple. a couple AOL, but it was the first time. See, when I saw that for the first time, and I'd used all the other things that were around it. There was an Apple one that everyone thought was going to be hot. There was like 6 or 7 of them at the time, and I remember there's CompuServe and the other one, Prodigy. I was like, this one's great because it loves consumers. That's the one thing. You could tell they were consumer friendly and they were community friendly. And the others, I said CompuServe was owned by Sears and IBM, if you remember. Yeah. And it was Prodigy was owned by Sears. And I said, it's everything Sears knows about computers and everything IBM knows about retail. And both of them sucked in their own industries eventually. But it was really very clear that this upstart who was very focused in on consumer and community was going to win. And it was just a better experience. It was easy to use. It was all kinds of things. And so it was very easy to see why. I tried to get the Washington Post to invest in them. They invested in this AT&T disaster interchange. Right. And I kept saying, no, this little company is going to be the thing. They're right. And so they did.
You remember Jim Kimsey?
Yes, of course. Yeah. That crazy guy.
Was crazy. Well, yeah, no, he was one of the things.
He helped not die.
Right. The one of the funner things for me was, and I've talked to Steve Case about this, is I used to go into those chat rooms. This is like 25 years ago. And once in a while, Steve was in the chat room with you.
He was, yeah.
And
Jim wasn't. I can't imagine Jim.
No. Jim was never. But I remember Steve being in the chat room on more than one occasion, which made it fun.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, company, he was great. It takes all kinds. No
credit. He's still doing a lot of innovative things.
He's a great guy.
What company in today's world would you want to have that level of access to that you had to AOL? If you were going to write another book.
Well, it was hard. He used to always try to give me the long arm, get away, Kara, kind of thing, until I knew too much. And then he's like, oh, all right. He was a very canny guy. He is a very canny guy. I have access to a lot of companies. I think I spent a lot of time talking to media people. I have a very good relationship with Bob Iger, for example. Interviewed him many times. I know all the Netflix people. I really like talking to them. I have pretty good access to Microsoft. I just recently interviewed Satya Nadella. Tim Cook's always been very open to talk. It's only the companies run by petty tyrants that are sort of have kept me away, as they say. I think Mark in general is not a jerk, but he's certainly working with me has not worked out well for him, I guess. And so I wish I had. I'd like to be inside his thinking on the metaverse. Because there's a lot of things to like about Mark Zuckerberg, a lot of things not to like about him, and so I'd like Mark's there. And with Twitter, it's a shame what's happening. You and I had that debate, obviously. Someone I was close to, actually, and not at all now.
Let's talk about that because in a lot of ways, I have to cede. And I've listened to our debate. Since
you have
had it,
okay.
And I have to cede some positions to you about what has happened because the data does not. It's not in Elon Musk's favor in terms of what's going on.
And the technology is really glitchy now.
And the technology and so forth. But I asked you a question at the end of that debate that I want to ask you again right now.
Sure.
If you remember that question, but it was,
I don't.
The question was, you believe he's hurting Twitter, and there's a lot of data that says that he is, But I asked you, but you don't want them to hurt Twitter, though, do
No.
you? You want Twitter to survive and
Yes.
thrive, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that the other day. I was like, I'm trying out all the others, and they're all some of them are quite better than others, but it's a really unique place, right? Like whether it's the Super Bowl or the Grammys or whatever, a lot of people are there. He's sucking the fun out of it, which was fun. Now it's mean. Like one of the things is you tolerated the mean because some of it was really fun and creative and interesting. So he's sucking the fun out of it for sure by being just a petty tyrant, essentially. He's constantly punching down. He's constantly insulting people. It's never uplifting, right? One of the things he said very early, he said, if you spend an hour here and you feel bad, this is a bad product. And I'm like, well, welcome to your world, like that kind of thing. And I think just having, right-wing people screaming at liberals is really not the way I want to spend my time. I've cut off comments. That's a shame. I used to love talking to people. Lots of people I disagreed with. Now it's just vile. Bitch, Kara is not really my day. I don't want to spend 1 minute of my day.
Yeah, I mean, I actually shut off the notifications at this point because you can't. I mean, if you put out a tweet, you could put out a tweet about your poodle. Right. And then you've got 20 people telling you you're the worst person that's ever lived.
That's right. And it's like, what's the point? It's not fun. It's not fun. You can wander over to TikTok, which has its own set of problems, which I've written about for years with China. And that's fun. Like what life is too short to be screamed at by a billionaire, honestly, and told you're an asshole. It's like, no, thank you. It's not and then like, you should pay me. Well, what are you giving me that's attractive? I'd love it to succeed. I think it's a wonderful product. I think it's always been troubled, by the way. It's always been a problematic business, but now it's just unpleasant. Like, unfortunately, because I love it. I have loved it, and there's so much to find, but now you can't find people. It's, and then it doesn't work as well. It's like one of those restaurants you used to love, and then you wish it would get better again.
But this is true about everything. At least this has been my life experience, because you're mentioning it. Okay, hot restaurant, then the restaurant fades. AOL is the center of the internet universe, and then it goes away.
Inevitable.
Facebook has this incredible rise, and now it's still a good business, but it's not the business that it was 15 years ago.
Sure. But you don't have to be a nasty prick while you're doing it, right? You know what I mean? Like this new blue check thing. Like, we're taking off the blue cups because they're corrupt. I'm like, I don't even know how I got my blue check. Like, what are you talking about? Why does it have to be that? Like, maybe they had a bad system in place. Who knows? And just be honest. We need to charge for these things because of this. Like, instead, it has to be like whacking people in order to feel better. And that's pathetic. That's just pathetic. I agree. Everything life is fatal, Anthony. Like, that's really pretty much what you're saying. And it is for every company that I've ever covered. You think about them, even good ideas, by the way. Like right now, Be Real is seeing declines, a really good product. Tonal is having some problems, great product. Like, there's nothing wrong with the product. Peloton, nothing wrong with the product. There's just secular and other issues happening. What I think the problem is that you have something that actually could be wonderful and really uniting, and it has to instead be divisive and lying about what's happening. And I think that's a sad thing, because it would be a good place to really bring people together and make people laugh and stuff like that.
Well, it's interesting because there's not one company in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which was created in the 1890s, that has stayed in the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Right,
and so you've had a full revolution. General Electric was that one company. People would point to say, well, GE's in there, but it got kicked out several years ago due to the areas of mismanagement that they faced. Okay, so we're down to our last few moments here. I want to do with you what I do with all my guests, which is I'm going to read you 5 words. Okay, and I want you to fire back to me your thoughts. Okay, and they're not really 5 words; they're names of people. Okay, and we've talked about some of them. So let's start with Steve Case.
Class act. Changes, thoughtful, doing a lot with his life. And he doesn't have to. He could sit on his islands in Hawaii where he came from and do nothing. And I think he tries to contributor.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about him. He wrote a great book. We're going to have him on.
That was a great book.
Yeah, he
all his books are very prescient.
Yeah, very, very thoughtful books. We're going to have him on Open Book. Sheryl Sandberg.
I'd like to see what she's going to do next. That's, I like her personally, and I think she was complicit in a lot of stuff that she should have spoken up about. I don't blame her fully because he's in charge of that whole company, but she certainly went along with some stuff that, especially around privacy and data, that I really wish she had been, perhaps have had more of a backbone. But we'll see what she does next. Everybody gets a chance again, and she's got enormous amounts of money and influence, so maybe she'll do something interesting.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Nice guy, most dangerous man in tech over the past decade. Really has ushered in an era of privacy violations that I think that we're still recovering from. Really most impactful, just because he's biggest. Not, lots of other sites have tried to do that, but thoughtless about his role in society in a way he should have been. Still, nice guy, very nice guy.
Steve Jobs.
Just a legend. As I'm writing this, I realize, he's not a man without faults, both personal and in work. But I wish he had not died. I think we'd all be a lot better because when I went back and looked at some of these quotes way before, he talked about podcasting before it happened. He talked about shifting to the post-PC world before it happened. He talked about, privacy in very clear terms. I would wish he was still living. A really important character.
What do you think he would have thought about all of our screen time usage?
Hated it.
He would have not liked it, right? Based on the interviews that I've seen and the books that have been written about him, he would not have liked all of this. He
wouldn't have liked any of it. He wouldn't. Everyone's always comparing Elon to him. I'm like, not even close. Like, he was not. Like if you look at the worst thing he did, look, he had some family issues. Like, hello, nice to meet everybody. And I think a little bit of that is much more complex. By the way, I do know that it's more complex. That said, like, what did he park his car funny? He parked in a handicap thing. That's jerky. Like, but honestly, some of the behaviors today, you're like, oh, I'd like that guy back. I think ultimately he had a care for product and a care for quality and a care for the consumer that is sorely missing.
And creativity, though, right?
Creativity, always. He was and willing to mix it up. I think we had so many back and forth, but I never felt like he was an adult. I don't know what else to say. I like adults. I like Tim Cook. I like Reed Hastings. I like adults.
I only had the chance to meet him once. I was at the Sun Valley conference in 2005.
Cool. He was
very thin at the time. He was sick.
That's the sick. He had first sickness. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he had given that speech at Stanford about a month or two.
Oh, that was 2009. That was 2009.
Okay, then it was 2009. Then
right.
I got my timing off, but I remember having the conversation with him about the speech and how, I thought that speech was great. I recommend that speech to everybody. Every once in a while.
Once a month. I read it once a month.
Yeah, and randomly every once in a while I post it up on Twitter, just YouTube. Please take a look at this because it's about life. And I often say on this podcast, Steve Jobs understood this. You get it. Mel Brooks once said that relax. None of us are getting out of here alive, Kara. Relax.
That's correct.
And that was Steve's mantra in that speech, that you've got to live without fear. And
except it wasn't depressing. It wasn't like, oh, well. And it was then get the fuck up. Like, that's what it was about.
Right, exactly. It was like, okay, do something.
Do something. Whatever you do.
I think that does happen to people. Oh, my God, I'm going to die. And so it doesn't matter. Life is irrelevant. That's the depressing side of it. The other side of it is, oh, my God, I'm going to die. Let's live. Let's hit that Hawaiian beach. Let's actualize our dream. Let's do something that we would like to do while we're here. Yeah. And that's something I got from Steve Jobs.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, two more people. Jeff Bezos.
Still waiting. Obviously brilliant, visionary in terms of everything. I'm still waiting for his great moment. I know it sounds crazy. I think could have a lot of influence. He's late. His tweets are. I'm a little bit like, you don't need to be a reactionary every minute of the day or mad at the Biden. I think he has an ability to be a real. Like, you saw how Gates transformed himself in terms of Gates and Melinda Gates transformed themselves into philanthropists. I think he could. I think his wife is showing him up right. His ex-wife is showing him up right now, showing him how to do it. He's got great wealth. He's super intelligent. Sometimes he's very much in in the weeds, and not the weeds. He's a smart guy doing some stupid things. I don't know what to say. Like he could be bigger and bigger.
So you're saying that he needs a transformative moment to move into the sort of the Carnegie Rockefeller Gates category.
I think he could. I'm glad he looks great. It seems like he works out a lot, and I'd like him to like really, like with the post or some of it, just really engage in ways that aren't just for himself. If that makes sense.
Elon Musk.
Oh, I feel so bad. What a brilliant guy. Full of great ideas. You know, I you know what I look at? I look at Tesla and I look at SpaceX, and I think that's what I try to focus on. Personally, I think he's a train wreck as a person, and it's a shame. I don't know what's happening, and he's intolerant. He's become intolerant. He's become intolerant in a way.
But this is something you feel fairly recently, right? Because
he's always had that element.
When I was at Recode, I don't know,
got along great. Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I think it was. You interviewed him. It was in Los Angeles. I came and saw the interview. Yeah, I mean, it was a. You think something has happened in the last year or two?
I think he has enablers, and I think he's indulged. That was about 10% of him. What he's like now, it was always there. You'd see it, flash out every now and then again. A little conspiracy theory, a little like telling lies that aren't true, and just putting them out there. That happened. It wasn't, a little bit off the deep end kind of thing. He talked about it himself a couple of years ago, especially when he's exhausted and everything. But I think we indulge these men, these delicate flower men, too much. And I think, when you hear from the Ukrainians, that he's just deciding what to do with equipment he sells with them, why is he involved in? I'm sorry. I would like the experts to be involved in public foreign relations and warfare. I don't love warfare either, but I don't know, just some of the things I'm like, what, really? Like, I think he thinks he's Iron Man. I don't know what's happening. I think he thinks he's Iron Man, but Iron Man was a movie. And so I would like him to be, he has such contributions to make and has made. I'd like him to shut up and make cars and rockets and shut up for a little bit. Just shut the fuck up. I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? He shouldn't become Trump. He should become great. He's right. So he's not stupid like Trump.
I'm a fan of his and an admirer of his work, but I get the oscillating behavior, which is sometimes confusing. Well, okay, my last question for you.
You're very kind.
What is the next chapter for you, Kara Swisher?
It's a good question. I'm pretty old. I'm pretty old, Anthony.
Oh, stop it. You get.
I want to be. I was just telling Scott Galley.
I'm a lot older. First of all, I'm a lot older than you.
But I want to be an activist shareholder. I was just thinking I'd be a good activist shareholder.
Oh my God!
Why does Dan Loeb get all the ink on that? I could be a very good activist shareholder. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, how hard is it? I kind of know all the things they know, and I can make a deck. But and be manipulative of things. No, I was teasing. I don't care about money. That's my biggest problem. I think I'll write these next books. I've got 2 books I'm working on, and I'll keep doing the podcast because I really enjoy it. But the very minute,
able to tell us the names of the books or not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay,
no.
All right, yep.
But one's coming out pretty soon, and it doesn't have a name yet. That's why. And the other one I'm going to start working on in the fall, but it's about death. It's about death and life extension and stuff like that. And I think I would like to work on those. And then I would really like to not retire, stop doing at some point. I like doing podcasts. When the minute I stop liking it, I love Pivot and stuff, I'll stop doing it. And I know it sounds dumb, but I'd love to write like a historical book, like just get deep into research on some historical figure who's dead. So I don't have to talk to them, and pick a really interesting, like Frederick Douglass. There's been a lot written about him, but someone like that, like I'd like to write a really significant biography of a historical figure, probably someone who hasn't been noticed, who deserves notice. That's what I would like to do.
Well, I mean, I'll tell
Scaramucci, the real story. You have to be dead, Anthony.
Not me, because I've only lived half my life, girl. Even though I'm 60, I'm only lived half my life. I'm looking forward to the back half. You got to think young, girl.
I got kids, honey. You and I both have little kids. What are you talking about? I have to raise my kids, and then I die. That's it. I go to college graduation, and then I die. That's what
I'm going to give you one to look at, because you are historical. You have a buff towards history. Is George Marshall?
Oh, interesting.
Take a look at George Marshall's life, because he is There's only been 2 real biographies written about him,
Okay.
and he's
Critically
an
important.
unsung
John
neo-Victorian.
Foster Dulles is the other one. Yeah, there's a couple.
He is literally one of the architects of the post-World War II American century.
Yep.
And of course, without his personality, the Marshall Plan could have never been put in place.
Agreed. What an amazing thing.
Even though he didn't come up with it, they went to him and said, well, you're the 5-star general. You're the only one that can sell this to the Republicans in the Congress. But people don't remember this. But there was a great book written about this a few years ago. He went to China after the Second World War at the behest of Truman, spent 6 months in China. And while he was there, he tried to resolve the conflict between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that. It resulted in the war on the continent and pushed Chiang Kai-shek into the island of Formosa, which became Taiwan. But his life is so quintessentially American, and he's an understated man. And I'll give you an example. He wanted to run the Allied invasion in Europe, and he went to the White House, and FDR said to him, I sort of really need you here. I need you here in Washington. So you're going to have to pick somebody other than yourself to run that invasion. And he knew that the person that he picked would go on to become president. He knew that.
Right.
It wasn't his ambition ever to be president. That wasn't his personality.
Right.
And so he picked Eisenhower, and he had other generals to pick. And it was a great choice because of
Another great man.
Eisenhower's humility. Ultimately, what Marshall saw in Eisenhower, despite his greatness and his leadership skills, he was humble in comparison to somebody like a MacArthur or a Patton.
Right. That's a really good
anyway,
choice. Okay. I'll take the suggestion. What a great suggestion.
Look at George Marshall's life because it fits your narrative.
All right.
People that do great things in this humble, silent sort of a way.
I love it. Okay, I'm on it. Right. I will take a look.
All right. Well, Kara Swisher, thank you.
I'm going to write the Anthony Scaramucci.
Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff I don't want you to write. There's some.
Then I'll wait till you're dead.
There is some sordid shit.
The day after you die, I'll call your wife.
Sure. Let me tell you something. It's been a great life, though. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
You seem to be enjoying yourself. That's one good quality.
Shit that's going on. Trust me.
I'm certain of it. I'm certain.
All right. Well, God bless you, and I hope.
Thank you.
Please come back on after you write this book, though. Okay.
I will. 100%.
Reinventing government, but the way I see it, it's performance and results. The California Department of Performance and Results, also known as CPR, which the state needs. Yeah, do I talk in buzzwords? Because these come from the people. Every single person in California is a customer, and they need to receive equal or greater value, and that is it. And there has got to be bravado and somebody to protect this 4th largest country of the world.
Welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci. I am joined by, I don't know, who's going to be the future governor of California. He's an activist, a philanthropist, a businessman, incredibly successful businessman, Stephen Klobuchar, but he's also a best-selling author. The book is phenomenal. It's called Facing Hard Truths, How Americans Can Get Real, Pull Together, and Turn Our Country Around. And by the way, I don't know, I wish I had written this book, Stephen. It's so good. And it's so relevant to what's going on right now. So I want to congratulate you on the book, congratulate you on your candidacy. But I'm talking to a busboy who became an entrepreneur who is now running for office. What a phenomenal American dream, an American success story. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your background. Hey everyone, it's Anthony Scaramucci here with some straight talk. Let me tell you, we've got 85% of our viewers who haven't hit the subscribe button yet. What's up with that? It hurts. Listen, I made my career by going all in. Right now, only 15% of our viewers are part of our subscribed family. So please take action. This helps us book more amazing guests. Hit subscribe, join our community, and let's turn these numbers upside down. Now back to the show.
Well, it is an aspirational story. I grew up born in Chicago. Matter of fact, with Ari Emanuel and I went to pre-K together in Chicago. We both ended up moving to LA. And kindergarten through first year of college, Mommy and Daddy wanted a doctor and a lawyer. I was going to be the doctor. Studied science, have a degree in neurobiopsychology, and thought I was going to be a heart surgeon until the last year of Brandeis University. And I said, I can't do this anymore. 16 more years. So I came back to Los Angeles and went to Cal State Northridge, learned accounting 101 and 102, and started leveraging on my relationships. And fortunately, I met Mike Milken when I was 13. I also met Harry Reid when I was 15. Harry was my father's attorney. I met Mike at Stephen S. White's Temple. And I went to go work in the real estate development business, learning shopping center development management, learned the tricks of the trade, and was promised a bonus the second year and wasn't paid it, so I left. Started my own company. At 24, built my first shopping center in Burbank, California. Victory in Magnolia. Did the same thing the company I was working for was doing, borrowed the money. And fortunately, during the S&L days, they were able to give you money based on credit of the assets you had, and I was able to borrow $400,000 more than the entire land and building cost, and proceeded to do that throughout Southern California. Second and third shopping centers were in Bakersfield, California, and then Hanford, California, Hemet, Buena Park, Mission Viejo, and moved down to Orange County. I was living in Newport Beach, had offices in Newport Beach and Mission Viejo. And then I hit the wall on one. Lake Forest, late 80s. Lost all my tenants. My contractor went broke. My subs went broke, and I had to build it myself. Ended up giving it back to the S&L, but didn't go bankrupt. And the good news is I learned how to build, and my father needed more inventory to continue his company, his timeshare company. So we went from the Jockey Club in Las Vegas and found a piece of property, and I built Polo Towers at 29. Lived within budget. My father showed up at the groundbreaking and the grand opening, and I was able to do it very successfully. Then my father decided to sell his company to Starwood Capital, Barry Sternlick, our friend. And I lasted a year and a half of that company as a co-CEO because the fellow I was working with didn't understand the business. So we ended up doing a baseball buy-sell. That's when you don't have a contractual right either side to buy each other out, and we just had to work it out. And I remember sitting with Madison Gross and Barry and Rick Kleeman at the time, and I ended up buying the company from my father's company that he sold, and was able to create the legacy of what I then eventually built. Had real good success, but then I was hit with a bankruptcy of my father, and he ran on tough times. I never told anyone about that until he passed. He went bankrupt, and it was about $20 million, and I bought that bankruptcy. So I started really with negative $20 million, and was wildly successful at Polo Towers in Las Vegas, and then did a deal with Marriott next door. And I realized at that time, after meeting 80 people at Marriott and building that project, Marriott's Grand Chateau, entrepreneurs and big corporate business cannot exist. Yeah. So they ended up buying me out. Sat on the sidelines for a year and saw a great opportunity by some of my great hedge fund buddies. Corsair, Brian Gonick, shows me a deck of a company he's got invested in. He says, "Kluby, I can't figure this out. Can you look at this?" And I said, "Brian, how much you got have in this deal?" Yeah, they had a sizable position. And I said, "This is all you got?" He goes, "Well, I'd get you K and a Q." And I'm like, "What's that?" I had no idea what a K and a Q was. I was a private guy. And so I got a copy of the K and a Q, and I still couldn't decipher what the company was about. And I said, "Brian, you got any more information?" And he showed me a roadshow document. And I looked at it, and I said, "Oh, my God." And kept my mouth shut and started buying stock in the company. And then I said, maybe I could buy this company. And at that time, there were activists in the business, and Magnetar and Dan Loeb over at Third Point, and Dune Capital, our friend Steve Mnuchin. I cold called them. And I said, "Hey, guys, you guys are not happy with this company. What if I buy it?" And they go, "You and what?" "Well, me and an attorney and I'll get a finance guy." And I found a finance guy, and I I underwrote the transaction, and I said, wow, there's a lot of diamonds in the rough, if you will, in this company. So I ended up tendering for the company, but not even knowing how to do that. I had to call my dear friend Jim Murray at MGM. I said, Jim, what do I do? He says, do you have a banker? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, let me give you some names of bankers. And I had a few to choose from, and I ended up choosing James Stewart at UBS. And I ended up tendering for the company. And everyone that was in that credit did phenomenally well. I think Dan Loeb told me that I bought the company at $16 a share, and his basis was like $3.50. Not a bad trade, Dan. But they were on the verge of bankruptcy again. This was a broken company for 20 years. And everyone bet against me buying it. It had M1, M2 issues. Its financial statements were revoked by the SEC. It had money laundering issues, Patriot Act issues, team issues, and more importantly, customer issues. So I had to fix the unthinkable. And we were able to do that, get the deal financed April of 2007. July 2007, what happened? The markets closed. Then we were hit with November of 2008. Everything was closed. And I had Soros as my partner at the time. And that was the day that George Soros went on air and started saying we're betting against the consumer. I called my dear friend Len Potter. And I said, Len, you guys can't be my partner anymore. Your big boss is betting against the customer. That's what we do. So what if I make you this deal? Give me 90 days to buy you out at par. And I had a big pref on me. And I'll give you 6%. So you get your money back plus 6%. That's not bad. You're betting against the consumer, so you think we're worthless. And you know what? Good news is I had a relationship with Mike Milken and Guggenheim. Took Soros out and then bought every other mid-market company at about 1.5, 2 times EBITDA before synergy savings. Created the greatest, largest hotel timeshare company in the world. With hotels in over 35 countries, 16 languages, 6 currencies. And we handled the balance sheet, income statement, and fixed that broken company, the unfixable. And at the same time solved the consumer issues by doing polling into the customer and to determine what the customer wanted. And all we did was live to my dad's original thesis, give the customer more than they bargained for. Just give them a little bit more than they bargained for. And I delivered the meaning of yes. I was able to put my business card at every front desk with my live email, live cell. Nobody had ever attempted that. And a card underneath each bed that says, yes, we clean here too. And created a culture of warmth and compassion. One in which we delivered the meaning of yes, both internally with our team and externally to each and every guest. And we lived in integrity. We lived in collaboration. We delivered in great guest service, equal or greater value. Now, these principles, I tell you, are the ethos of how I live. And what I didn't tell you is during this period of time prior to Sunterra, I had an architect by the name of Joel Bergman in Las Vegas. And he said to me, hey, have you ever met this guy, Donald Trump? I said, nah, Steve Wynn's talked to me about him, and Milken casually mentioned him, but Milken later in life told me, Stephen, you know what the difference between Donald Trump and you is? I'm like, no, Mike, tell me. Since you gave me my business degree, Mike, that's where I went to business school. He said, well, I financed you and I never financed him. There you go. So I'm sitting in Trump Tower years and years ago, across from him, Rona. I think her name was Rona.
It was.
Waiting to go in the office a couple of times. And every time
he ended up alienating Rona too, as he does with everybody. But okay, keep going.
Yeah, so I remember leaving and going back to Vegas after that second meeting, and Joel Bergman said, "We're going to do the deal with him. the Trump Tower in Vegas, the fractional timeshare part. I said, Joel, I can't. Got a bad feeling. This guy doesn't pay his contractors. I pay my guys within 24 or 48 hours. I got integrity. I don't think this guy does because he was trained by Roy Cohn. I had watched that James Wood documentary on Max way back when on how this guy was trained. Lie, deny, lie, deny. That's this gentleman's ethos. And I have values, and he doesn't. I'm a gentleman. I serve. He likes to be served. It's just the antithesis. And as life went on, as I created Diamond Resorts, I thought back on this when I was doing Undercover Boss, and I'd done it the second time. And I said, these shows, The Apprentice and Undercover Boss, are similar. Act 1, 2, 3, 4, and a reveal. And both shows, at the end, people cry. But at the end of my show, they're happy. And I don't say anything other than when I'm displeased. I just say, go see HR. I don't do this, you're fired, this drama, this bullshit, this hullabaloo. I'm built to serve, and I always have, and it goes back to originally when I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to serve, take care of people. I like service. I'm a busboy at heart. I like cooking and serving.
Stephen, the book was awesome. Give me the pitch. We have my advertise. I promise I'm a short podcast because we have great listeners. And
go.
And so I need a 5-minute pitch on Stephen Klobeck for governor. Yeah. I think the book you write is incredibly insightful. I want every one of my viewers and listeners to go out and buy your book, because I think your book, you called it the center. It's sort of like, to me, it's the radical center, because you're providing common sense solutions. I get done with your book, I'm like, this isn't really about left or right. This is about right or wrong. There's great clarity in your book. So give me, in the minutes that we have remaining,
what's it?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Anthony. So it's the hard center with bravado, because the center has always been here. We've been listening to the loud, noisy, hard right and hard left, and no one. As I decided to do this, I interviewed every single candidate as I moved back to California. Yeah, I actually left a 0% tax state to come pay tax. It was my dream. This is where I grew up. And I came back here and I interviewed every single candidate. I built my dream home, and I said, after I interviewed every candidate, this is the best we got. Maybe I should look at this. And I called Frank Luntz and I said, what do you think? You're crazy, Klubeck, but you've been good crazy. So go ahead and so I studied the income statement and balance sheet, and I started to meet over 300 people. And I saw there were solutions, no different than fixing a broken company. And I ran tourism in the United States. I created Brand USA. I ran basically Nevada, and I've done local politics. Have I run an election? Yeah, when I had to tender for Sunterra, I ran an election. I didn't need 50 plus 1%. I needed over 90%. So I do the difficult. I changed the name of an airport. So I did a survey of those in California, Anthony. And I wanted to listen to them, no different than finding out how to solve the problems of the customer in a hotel business. What were the issues of California? It's not open for business. It's not affordable, livable, or workable. There was no respect, no responsibility, no results of leadership. The Democrats had failed to execute. They're not accountable for dollars, and they don't enforce the law. Well, I believe in the law. We don't steal. It's $950 and zero. Eighth commandment. Okay. It's not Elon Musk's style. It's more of a Clinton-esque style. Reinventing government. But the way I see it, it's performance and results. The California Department of Performance and Results, also known as CPR, which the state needs. Yeah, do I talk in buzzwords? Because these come from the people. Every single person in California is a customer, and they need to receive equal or greater value, and that is it. Mm-hmm. And there has got to be bravado and somebody to protect this fourth largest country of the world.
Yeah, it's the fourth largest economy, and it's one of the great innovators of global history, frankly. And you had a great success. Most people that get to California that have your ambition have great success. It's the bedrock of the American dream. We went through your book, and I took 5 words out of your book, and I'm going to say the word, Stephen, and then I want you to manifest in your mind a sentence about the word.
Go.
Okay, ready? Okay. The first word is truth.
Integrity's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got that.
Don't bust the trust.
And
You bust the trust with me, you're done.
It was so brilliant. I would say integrity equals opportunity. That was a big lesson in your book for me. Okay. I'm going to say the word America.
Aspiration.
Okay.
Opportunity.
How about Americans? Americans, as you write about them.
Customers.
Okay. California.
The dream.
What about the word Klobeck?
Klubeck, it was actually Klobok, Klobok. It's a gentleman that came over in the 1900s with very few pennies, my grandfather, from Russia. And if he would not believe what his grandson has done, and that's the American dream.
I just think, listen, I don't know. I think you're going to be the governor, okay? And I want to be helpful to you. I think that this book, everybody should go out and read it. The title of the book is Facing Hard Truths, How America Can Get Real, Pull Together, and Turn Our Country Around. And I will say something about you, that I see California in you. I see what California represents to our society. And a lot of our trends start in California. And so when I talk about aspiration, I see you not only going on to fix California, but being a good template, if you will, a good litmus test for the rest of the country. So I'm rooting for you, Mr. Klobeck. I want to see you be the governor, and I'm proud to know you, and I want people to go out and buy your book, and I appreciate you coming on our show today.
I admire you and everything, the hard work you've done, and we've watched each other grow in business, and bravo to you, and for your righteousness and for your unwavering commitment to be you and stand up for what is right.
Well, sweet of you. And we both share one thing. After reading your book, I was like, man, this guy really loves the country, but there's something else about you, Stephen. You really love people. It comes out, you reek of a person that really wants to lift other people up, lower the ladder for other people, and help them get up the ladder. And so
I have one thing to say.
I learned a lot from your book, by the way, sir. I will tell you that. I have a lot of respect. I knew you and had a lot of respect and admiration for you, but your book took it to a deeper dimension for me.
Two things. One, I'm a guy who sits in the back of the theater, will take all the incoming bullets and watch my team get their trophy. Two, if I'm successful as governor of California, which I know I will be, my greatest goal is not fixing the balance sheet and income statement. It's to create true great leaders that will far surpass my time to make sure California is always the forefront in the bully pulpit of the United States.
Amen. All right, we're going to leave it there. So thank you so much for joining. Hey, thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, here's another one right up here that you might like.